We are good to go.
Okay, thank you, Loretta.
Sure.
Welcome, everybody. My name's Lion Steve Kaplan from Troy. This session is on financial oversight. I'm going to ask to hold the questions towards the end. I'll leave some time so you can get your questions in there. You can submit them on chat to Loretta, and she'll have them ready to go then. There is a handout that goes with this. It was on the website. If you don't have one already and you want to do one after the lecture, then it'd be a nice summary of what I'm going to talk about. If you've got one with you here, you can just kind of follow along. There's also on the Lions Learning Center, which is on lionsclubs.org. You sign in as a member, and then on the right-hand side, there's a Learn tab. Hit the Learn tab, you get to the Learning Center. There's 24 nice courses on there. They're all free. Several of them are to do with finances and treasurer's responsibilities and so on. So you might want to check those out when you're have some free time. They're pretty good courses out there. This one is the subtitle on this is what club members should know about their financial policies and what they should expect from their treasurer. So even though this is a required course for treasurers to take, it's really going to be presented as any club member that's going to be watching, what would they expect from their treasurer? So you can kind of infer from that that these are the things that I think the treasurer should be providing for them. And if I was just a regular club member, I've been a treasurer for many years, and I love it. It's one of my favorite jobs in Lions is to be the treasurer, because you really feel like you're involved with every single project, fundraising projects and service projects, and just all the wheeling and dealing that goes on. You feel like you're involved in all of that and partly responsible for it. So it's a position of high demand and high responsibility. But if I was just a club member, not a treasurer, what would I expect my treasurer to provide to me so that I could keep up to date with everything? And the most important thing would be the financial reports. I've been at club meetings where they give oral financial reports, and those are like nearly impossible to follow. If somebody is just reading off a bunch of numbers and, since our last meeting, we did this and this and this, I'm really not going to be able to follow that very well. I need a written financial report, at least quarterly. If you want to do a quarterly written report and then in between say, since the last meeting, we've done this and this, that's okay with me. But I think at least quarterly, if not more often, you need to provide a written financial report for your club members. I don't really care if you're using software, if you want to use QuickBooks or some other accounting software, or if you just want to write it up on a word processor off of your checkbook register. Anything works as long as you show me the opening balance for that time period, all the income, all the expenditures, and what the ending balance is. I'm a happy boy with that. You need to be kind of itemizing what those categories are, though. The income, you want to have, from this fundraiser, from these members for dues, from these members for meals. You want to have those line items in there, the meals, the dues, the pancake breakfast or whatever. And the expenditure is kind of the same way. You don't have to show every single check that you've written, but you want to group them together into these 5 checks. We went towards the pancake breakfast for supplies, and the total was for pancake breakfast this amount. I don't really need to see the individual check amounts until an audit would be coming, but I would like, as a club member, to see how much income we had from the pancake breakfast and what our expenses were. So those would be things that you would itemize up and show as line items totaled up there. I've seen lots of financial reports where they try to show compared to budget, compared to how much they've spent out of the budget, percentages of the total, and all kinds of fancy numbers. The only two that would really interest me is the numbers, the actual numbers of that time period, and comparing them to your annual budget. I do think comparing them to an annual budget is a good way to go, because that gives all your club members a plan of attack, sort of, if things start to go wrong. If your fundraisers were supposed to make $5,000 this year so that you have that much money in the bank, and a couple of your things got canceled because of the COVID situation, you're only going to make $2,000, not $5,000. That shows me that, we've already budgeted that we're going to spend that $5,000, so we're going to end up being $3,000 in the hole. Gives me some things that I can look at and say, maybe we need to trim back these donations. Maybe we need to look for another fundraiser to replace this one, and so on. I do like the idea of showing them next to a budget. A budget is done at the beginning of the year normally by the finance committee, and the finance committee is by law chaired by the treasurer, by the bylaws. So you want to make a budget for each fund. If you have an administrative fund, if you have a activity fund, if you have more than those funds, you might own a city park, and so you have a park fund also, or something like that. You need to have a budget for each one of those funds separately. Each one of those accounts that you keep money in should have its own budget. Keep in mind that a budget does not give any authority to spend money. A budget is just a game plan. It's where you think you're going to be 6 months or a year down the road. So if your budget says, you're going to make these following donations, that doesn't really give the treasurer permission to write those checks. It's just they still have to go to either the board of directors or at a club meeting and say, in the budget, we've got, 5 different donations we're going to make to the Lions state projects here in December, and we've got the funds to do it. I'm going to go ahead and write those checks and ask for a motion to get those passed, or to write those checks. So even though the board of directors and the club carries or passes the budget at the beginning of the year, that doesn't mean the treasurer has the authority to actually spend that money. It's just a game plan as to where you think you're going to be. So that game plan makes it really nice if you compare the actual numbers to that game plan. Like I said, you can tell we're halfway through the fiscal year and we're way ahead on spending or way behind in fundraising. We can make some adjustments in the second half of the year then to accommodate that. So as a club member, I would be looking for a budget, and I'd be looking for a financial report, and I would hope that they would compare the two as we go through the year. The thing that most Lions do understand, if you've been in Lions any period of time, you understand that golden rule about your separation of funds. On the handout, it's right in the middle of the page, of the front page there. It says, under no circumstances may the net income of club projects or activities raised from the public be used in any manner whatsoever for administrative purposes. So what that's saying is anything that you spend on the club members, you have to raise from the club members. Anything that you spend on the pub, or money that you make off of the general public, should be going back for those charitable type activities that you do for the public. So the only way to keep that money straight is to have what we call an administrative fund and an activities fund. And you can name them anything you want, but those are the official names in the bylaws from the standard form. The administrative fund income is from club member dues, meal money, tail twisting money, anything that you do at your club meetings, you can collect and put into the administrative fund. The activity fund is the public money. So all your public fundraisers, your pancakes, your selling brooms, whatever you do to raise money, all that money goes into the activity fund. Interest off of both of those accounts stays in its own account. If you've got interest on activity money, it has to stay in the activity fund. There's no rule against saying you can't have both of those funds in the same checking account. You can have one checking account that has both administrative and activity money, but you have to be able to show on paper what the balance is at all times between the two. So you would kind of have to have a checkbook register that would have two columns at the far end, one column of administrative and one of activities, and you'd be adding and subtracting from both of those columns as you go along so that you're always seeing the balance. Some people like to do it that way because then they only have one checkbook to register to balance each month. Some clubs feel it's easier and safer to keep that money separate in the two separate bank accounts. So you'd have a separate checking account for administrative and a separate one for activities. The question that I get asked a lot is, what about an activity that's kind of split between the two? Can I use money raised from club members during a public activity to put in my administrative fund? And I'm going to give you a kind of a warped answer to this question. There's two different answers to it, and I'm going to tell you what they are in a second. But what we're talking about is, say you bring in cupcakes at a club meeting and your tail twister raffles them off or auctions them off at the club meeting, and that's from club members. We all recognize that as tail twister money, and that's administrative money. If you took those same cupcakes, though, and sold them outside of the local Walmart store, you're selling them to the general public, we would all recognize that as a public fundraiser, and that would be activity money. Well, can you do the same activity at one time? Say you're selling them out at Walmart, out to the general public, but you sell several dozen of them to your club members. Can you take the profit from those sales and move it over into the administrative fund? The two answers are this. The IRS, the legal answer is, sure, that's fine. They don't have a problem with you doing that as long as you keep really good paperwork, as long as you run it all out of your activity fund, and then you're going to write one check from the activity fund to the administrative fund, and on a receipt somewhere, keep a record. I'm writing this check because these 6 Lions, and you name them, all bought a dozen cupcakes at this much profit per dozen cupcakes, and that's what we're moving over. The IRS says that's fine to do, no problem. Lions International has a slightly different answer. They say it may be legal to do that, but we don't want you to have the appearance of anything improper going. And it would be improper to take public money and move it to administrative. So we don't want you to do it at all. So I'm kind of torn in between when clubs ask me that, because there's a legal answer that it's fine, but a Lions International policy that says we really don't like you to do that. Same thing with parking cars at a county fair. A lot of times we consider that being hired as an outside contractor. And a county fair might hire your club to provide manpower to direct the cars that are being parked. And they might pay your Lions Club $1,000 at the end of the fair, say. Where does that money go? The IRS says you were hired as an outside contractor. They were hiring you people as workers. The workers can donate that money to either side they want. You can put it in your administrative side if you want, because that's money given to the Lions Club members, and the Lions Club members can donate to either side. Lions International says if you're identifiable as a Lions Club, if you're wearing Lions shirts or wearing Lions hats or you have a sign that says parking done by the Lions Club, if you're advertising it in any way, they consider that public money then, because it has that appearance that you're getting it from the public, and they would want you to put that in the activity fund. So I'm just going to leave it up to the interpretation of each individual club. Do you want to go with what the IRS says, or do you want to go with what Lions International says? In either case, remember, money can't flow from the activity fund to the administrative fund without proper cause, but you can always put money from administrative over into the activities fund. If you got a big inheritance, somebody died and they left the Lions Club money, you have to ask, were there any conditions on that? If there was conditions like, your club does such a good job of helping the public with eyeglasses, I wanted to leave you this, $10,000 donation. That sounds like they want you to use it for, there's a condition on that, they want you to use it for activities. But if it was a former Lions Club member, for instance, and they said, I just love coming to the meetings all the time, and here's a $10,000 donation, you could put that in your administrative fund. You can put that anywhere you want. And if down the road you needed some more money in activities, you can there move money that direction. You can move it from administrative to activities, just not the reverse once it's there. So keep that in mind. As a club member, you should always be keeping that in mind. And as a treasurer, you got to follow those special rules as far as keeping the money separate and reporting on it separate. One thing that I would also want to see as a club member is that all the club funds are audited. I'd want to make sure that there's some kind of safety provisions put in place that somebody couldn't abscond with the money. That isn't to say that I don't trust my treasurer. I do, but mistakes happen and situations change, and you just want to protect that treasurer more than anything. If money comes up missing, you want to make sure that you protect that treasurer by having the things audited and so on. So in an audit, on the handout, there's a list of things that you can do, and it's like reconcile the treasurer's reports with the bank statements, have receipts for all the expenditures. So for every check you write, you should have a receipt for it, some kind of a receipt showing a thank you letter, or a receipt from the grocery where you bought the food, or something that you can put in a binder or folder to have ready for an audit. All the deposits should be itemized and categorized. We talked about those line items that appear on a financial report. So if you gather money up at a club meeting, you need to keep it straight. How much of this was club dues? How much of this was meal money? How much of this was tail twister money? Add that up to make one big deposit. You need to have that itemized out on your checkbook register there, or on your ticket of your deposit ticket, so that you can put that back if into the proper category and prove where it belongs on that treasurer's report. The fund should be audited. All the records that you get financial should be kept for at least 7 years. That's the IRS. They can go back and look at records for 7 years. And there's a new thing on Lions International's website that they're making a big deal out of the club dispute resolution procedures that you should be following if there's ever anything comes up missing, or you have a dispute of some kind. Remember, as a club, though, there's a big difference between fraud and some unintentional oversight. Somebody could put something in the wrong fund. Somebody could be late in making a deposit unintentionally, and they're not trying to swindle you out of some money. But you would want to treat that person a little differently than if you thought somebody was really stealing money, was writing checks to themselves and not keeping receipts and so on. So, there is different ways that you can look at a discrepancy in there, and how you would want to handle it, publicly, non-publicly, using the resolution procedures that Lions International does, or just something a little less formal than that. Real quickly, on the back of the handout, there's a very small section on legal compliance. I covered most of that in my last lecture on board members, because they have the legal requirement to make sure that these kind of things get done. The IRS needs an annual return. The Ohio Attorney General needs an annual return. We recommend strongly, and 97% of you are incorporated. That gets a renewal letter sent every 5 years that you can send in to get renewed again for just a $25 payment for the next 5 years. Those three things we need for all the clubs to be doing. There are databases out there on websites, irs.gov, ohio.gov, where you can look those things up yourself and see if your club is compliant. I happen to be the compliance chairman for our district, and I run this list monthly and see where clubs are. So if you have any questions, you feel free to contact me. My email address is skpk1984@aol.com. Send me an email and I'll send you right back with where your club stands if you think you have any issues with that. The one that's going to be an issue coming up in the near future is sales tax. Clubs need to be paying their sales tax when they sell tangible taxable products to the public. Again, we covered that in the board meeting. I don't want to spend a lot of time here because some of you are repeating the class. But clubs are going to get hammered with that in the near future. The state is looking into all nonprofit organizations for lack of making money. They're going to be using this as a revenue maker for the state. So they're looking at nonprofits as far as not paying their sales tax when it's due. So if you're paying, or if you're selling brooms, flowers, things like that that are taxable products, you need to be collecting the sales tax and turning it into the state. Supporting organizations is the next thing on here. I just want to briefly mention, if you have a supporting organization like a Leo Club or a Lioness Club or some other kind of support group that helps you in your activities, what we recommend is that you let them use your EIN number. EIN is Employer Identification Number. You all have one, and that's what you need to look things up on that databases, by the way. But like if a Leo Club gets started in a school for you, you give them your EIN number and they open up a bank account using that number. And therefore, anything that they do becomes part of your club. So the secretary, when they report their community service that they've done, they can include anything that that Leo Club did as an extension of your club. That's what your club has done. So if the Leo Club went out and shoveled snow off the walks of senior citizens in their town, you claim that the Lions Club did that. And you can acknowledge that it was the Leo Club, but you get to claim that as credit. What this does, though, is it helps the Leo Club. They have no filing requirements at all now. All of that financial information and service information becomes part of your Lions Club. You add that to your numbers, and when you do your IRS return, you're doing it for both of those organizations, as long as they're using their own your EIN number. If they got their own EIN number, all of a sudden that Leo Club has to report to the IRS, has to report to the Attorney General, needs to be incorporated, and so on. So if you're letting your Leo Club or supporting organization use your EIN number, you get credit for everything they do. They should give you a financial report that shows, their activity. You add it to your financial report at the end of the year, make one big report out of it, and then use that as your filing basis. This also gives that Leo Club your insurance protection and liability protection that Lions International provides for the clubs, that becomes extended to that Leo club then too. So they don't need to worry about that kind of thing either. So supporting organizations, make sure they're using your EIN number. The last section on the handout is about per capita tax and club dues. And as a Lions Club member, I probably know what the club dues are, but do I know about all the discount programs and the different amounts that you can charge different members? There's 2 billings that come out every year, or 2 billings that come out twice a year, I should say it that way. One billing comes from Lions Clubs International, that's your per capita tax. And then there's another billing that comes from the Cabinet Secretary Treasurer, or Cabinet Treasurer, if you only have the one office, which covers state and district dues both. The district person that sends you that invoice will take your payment and split it between the state and the district and forward part of that money on. So the thing to know though, and if you don't have the handout, this is where it's handy to get it after the meeting, because here's some unusual figures going on. The 2 billings come at the same time. They come billing date July 1st and January 1st, but they're not based on the membership of the same time frame. The ones that come from Lions Clubs International, the July 1st billing is based on membership of June 30th. They only have like a 1-day turnaround time. It's all computerized. They send out that bill July 1st. It's based on what your count was on June 30th. But the district sends their bill out July 1st, but it's based on membership a month earlier on May 31st. That's important for a club secretary to remember. Say you're gonna clean out your roster of some people that haven't paid their dues off and you're gonna end up dropping them. Most clubs say, well, we just need to drop them by the end of June so we don't get charged again. Well, you are gonna get charged for them from the district and state because they bill on that May 31st line. So really, if you want to drop somebody before the billings come out, you got to make sure you're doing it by the end of May to catch both of those billing cycles. The billing cycle for the average member is $21.50 a half from international and $8 a half from the district and state. So if you add that up, the dues that is charged to the club is $59 a member for the average member, for the average active member. There's going to be some exceptions coming. So a club dues needs to be above $59 or the club is actually losing money for every member they have. The first $59 is just being collected and passed on. So how much does your club need to have to operate, to pay for its guest speakers when you have a program, to pay for its postage and printing expenses and the PO box that you rent, and how much money do you have to make off your members to have all that? That's the balance of your administrative fund, or a budget amount of the expenditures is what you should be shooting for there. I can't tell you what that number is. Is it $10 a member? Is it higher than that? Is it lower than that? I don't know, because each club can do some different things. Some clubs do like raffle drawings within their club members where they have a white elephant sale or raffles just within their club meetings, and they make some extra money that way. So they don't need to do as much as a club that doesn't do any of those extra fundraisers. They would need to have their club dues set a little bit higher. One word about that, when you're doing a club auction night just for your club members, and you're worried about that split of funds. You know, we're trying to raise money for our administrative fund. Do we have to put any in the public money? Because we've got a guest speaker here. Maybe he participated in tail twisting. Maybe he bid on something in the auction. We have the spouses of our Lions members that aren't Lions. Are they considered Lions Club members, or are they considered general public? How about if you have visitors from another Lions Club there that night and they bid and get something out of your auction? Don't worry about all that. All of that is still considered administrative money. All the money raised at a Lions Club meeting can be considered administrative money. The only exception would be if you're doing a public fundraiser where you're, doing great invites to the general public. But if it's just occasional Lions spouse, that's still a Lions member as far as we're concerned. And a visiting Lion is still a Lions member. So don't get too concerned about that. But the $59 that you collect from everybody is passed through money. And so you need to add to that to have your dues set for the year. There are a couple of exceptions. The big one that a lot of clubs are missing out on is the family member. A family member, you have one person that pays full dues, full club dues, and then the second and third and fourth and fifth, however many other members of that family there are, they only pay half of the per capita tax from international. So they would be saving $21.50 a year in their dues for all the second, third, fourth members of that family, however many there are in the club. So in my club, for example, we charge those members, the family members, $20 less. It's just a more even round number than trying to pay $21.50 less split, when we bill semi-annually or whatever. So you can make a discount to a member because you're not being charged as much for that family member. They don't necessarily have to pay that same amount to your club. So not all your club members are getting charged the same amount necessarily, and that's perfectly fine because the club isn't being charged for it. There's another one that's still in effect, student members. Those are ages 18 to 30 that are still enrolled in a higher education. So if you've got students in your club, they again can only have to pay the half of the per capita tax from the international. So again, they're saving $21.50. And there's something called life members. I don't know how many we have in our district, not more than one or two, I think. But life members paid a huge fee up front, and then they don't pay anything to Lions International. They're saving $43 a year on their billing if you have any of them in your club. There's also an entrance fee to get into the club. Right now it's $35 for all members. Whenever they join, it's an additional 35 members. I know some clubs pick that fee up for their new members. I think that's a nice idea if you can afford it. Other clubs, everybody has to pay the $35. But there are two waivers that are currently in effect there. One is for student members again, 18 to 30, still enrolled in school. They can get a waiver and they don't have to pay the $35. That could be a nice campaigning technique to use. We have a Leo club in our club, and when they graduate out of the Leo club, we try to get them to convert to Lions, and that's one of the selling points we give them, is that they don't have to pay that entrance fee. And right now, they're still offering the U.S. veteran. A U.S. veteran doesn't have to pay the $35 if you submit the right paperwork on that. So those are the kind of things that I think a club member should know, and a treasurer should be providing for them. We still got about, 14 minutes here. If anybody has any questions on any of the financial stuff of a club, I'd like to answer your questions.
I have a question for you, Steve.
Yeah.
On the family members, they have to be at the same address, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. Second, this one may be I should probably ask you only, but I'm going to ask it here. On the dropping members by the May 31st.
Right.
Okay, because I am the CST. and, pulled my hair out half the year. But I noticed clubs can backdate when they drop their members. I don't understand how that works and how that's supposed to work as far as billing goes. If they're backdating those dropping when they drop a member.
I think it's on the date that the July 1st and the January 1st, on those billing dates, it's whatever your number is. And then if you end up dropping somebody later and want to claim that you did it back in May, you still get billed for that person. And I don't think you can get out of it.
Okay.
It's whatever your member of
I mean, it's whenever I check to see what the club numbers were for that day, correct? For that bill, I mean, for as far as billing clubs for the district dues, state dues.
Yeah, the CST is supposed to be looking on May 31st and November 30th, those dates to make your list. And then whatever that number is, you're supposed to go with it. If you're a week late doing that and somebody sneaks in a drop in that week and you're going to give them credit for it, that's fine. But technically, you're supposed to be looking on those two membership dates and printing out that report so that you can send the bills out based on that. And the clubs have no recourse. If they say, oh no, we dropped these guys 6 months ago, we just didn't send in the paperwork, it's too bad. They still have to pay the money because the district is being charged that number from the state. And so it's just a pass-through number.
Okay, that's all I had.
Anybody else question? Finances?
I have one, Steve. It's Kathy.
Yes.
On sales tax, I was under the impression that we get so many days per year that we do not have to pay sales tax on our sales.
There is
If
such
we're a 501c3.
Yeah, there is such a loophole. It's 7 days worth. If you're 501c3, if you're a charity, there's 7 clubs in our district that have a charitable branch attached to them.
Yeah.
All the other clubs, the C4s, have to pay the sales tax on anything they do. The C3s can take advantage of several loopholes, and that's the most common one, is the 7-day rule. That if it's less than 7 days, you're selling a product, and you're just going to report that was a broom sale all on one day, of course. So you don't have to pay the sales tax. You claim an exemption on that. But that's only if you're a C3 charitable club. Like I said, there's only 7 of those in the district.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. And we're one of those.
Yes.
So that's what I needed to know for sure. Thank you.
Steve, hey, Steve.
Yeah.
This is Bruce. And reference that question that Kathy just asked there. Isn't that set up so that if you are a 501c3 and you get the first 7 days, if you do the 7 days, you can have those. You don't have to collect sales tax. But if you go over that, you actually lose that exemption for the whole time period, I believe, isn't it? Including the first 7.
Yes.
Not just for that one day.
7 days out of the year, if you're not going to claim it for the whole year. You're right. If you sell it for longer than 7 days, they consider that like you're doing a regular business. You're selling something. If you're selling the brooms and you put them in a hardware store and the owner of the hardware store is selling those for you and he's selling them all year long, you're going to be expected to pay sales tax on that, or at least the hardware owner is going to have to pay it for you. But if it's just a door-to-door kind of, you're selling to your friends and neighbors and you're going to claim that we only did that for less than a week, then yes, you can claim the exemption if you're C3. And but not if you're doing it kind of in a year-long basis kind of thing. No, then you lose the whole exemption.
Okay.
Anybody else? What I talked about in the board member one about sales tax too was, you remember 2 years ago when the Attorney General's office made a big deal out of anybody that wasn't registered, we all had to get registered with them. That law had been on the books for a number of years that we were supposed to be doing that. And they finally started talking, the Attorney General started talking to the IRS. They communicated with each other, and the Attorney General got a list of all the nonprofits in Ohio and started demanding that they pay up or get registered up. And the same thing is happening right now with the sales tax office. The sales tax office and the Attorney General are talking to each other because that's a source of revenue for the state. So within the next year or two, I see they're going to come out hammering on sales tax, just like they did Attorney General stuff a couple years ago. And the clubs that are non-compliant now could face some more severe fines and back taxes and things like that. So we're really stressing that everybody kind of get on board with the sales tax. If you're a C4, like most of us are, you want to kind of look at that and try to get your board of directors to get on board with it. You get a vendor's license from the state website or the local county auditor's office. They assign you a number, and then they'll set you up on a schedule, usually twice a year, to where you have to submit the sales tax that you've collected. You can include it in the sale price of the thing you're selling, just cut down on your profit margin a little, or you can collect it outright, but you collect whatever is due in the county in which you made the sale. Everybody should be getting on board with that soon. Okay. Anything else?
Steve, can you repeat again where we go to get these forms so that we can start paying sales tax?
There's a Department of Sales Tax on the, I think it's under ohio.gov, but there's a sales tax division or department, and they have a form online that you can get. And I think there might be a $25 filing fee to get it, or you can go to your county auditor and just do it in person at the county auditor, and it's still the same $25. But either one will get you the vendor number, and then it's that vendor's number that you do all the reporting on.
Okay. Thank you.
Somewhere in the stuff that you have for the financial, in regards to dropping members for whatever reason, I'll include death and resignation and failure to pay dues. It said something, I thought you said something, or it says something about paperwork needs to be submitted. In the past, all we've done is dropped them off the roster in the LCI forms or schedule there so that it showed up as no longer a member. Is that sufficient, or is there separate paperwork that needs to be filed?
Well, I'm an old-fashioned guy. I said paperwork, but you do it online now. Yeah, you just go through
Okay.
the computer and mark it off your roster, and it's taken care of.
Okay, because that's what I've been doing, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't causing us additional expense by failure to fill out paperwork.
No, you just do it online, and you can check your roster anytime and make sure that they've processed all the drops that you've put in or all the new members you put in. Look at your roster periodically, make sure that if you've got a family member in your club, sometimes they drop them after a year and you have to resubmit that they're still a family member. So, you want to keep on top of that roster and make sure that they're billing you correctly. I talked at one point about pre-authorizing some expenditures. A lot of clubs have a rule that says if you get a per capita tax bill, the treasurer can just pay it. Because if everything's proper, if the right numbers are on it, you just go ahead and pay it. You don't have to wait for a meeting to get permission from the board to do it. That's okay to do. The board can pre-authorize some fixed billings like that, but it has to be done every year. Every year, like the first meeting of the year, the board would have to renew that policy. A board can't make a policy this year that carries for the next 10 years. They only have the authority to do something for 1 year. So each year, that first meeting, you'd want to get if that's your policy in your club, you'd want to get a new statement on the books that says this year the treasurer is allowed to pay the per capita tax billings when they come, so we don't have any big delay. You know, a lot of clubs go dark in the summer or send their books off to be audited before they would get back in business. So, you know, policies like that are fine as long as the board's approving them. Anything else?
You mentioned back in the board meeting that the board passed resolutions, et cetera, but then they were supposed to, I thought, I just want to clarify this, supposed to bring it to the general populace of the group for final approval. Is that true for this automatic payment of certain bills that we would authorize the treasurer for?
You know, the board can make a rule and just announce to the club, this is what we did. You don't need the club's approval if the board approved it, but the club has the authority to overrule it and say, no, 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 we don't want that. We want stricter control over the money. So we're not going to allow any pre-authorizations. The board could, the club could overrule them, but the board can just come and say, you know, at our meeting, we authorize the treasurer to make these prepayments. And if there's, you know, if there's no objection, unanimous consent, the club is agreeing to go along with that.
All right. So you're still giving them the option to.
You're still giving them the option, yeah. But
Okay.
they don't have to officially make a motion to do it all. They can just, by their silence, they're agreeing to it.
Okay. Thank you.
If anybody has any other questions, like I say, throughout the year, or as you think about some of these legal things or financial things, send me an email, skpk1984@aol.com. Be happy to answer them throughout the year. And if you want to check on your compliance as the year progresses, we can let you know where you stand on those kind of things if you can't find it yourself on those databases. They're hidden sometimes, but I know where they are. I can show you. Anything else? Okay, you were a good audience. Thanks for everything. I hope you guys all learned something through this, all the classes today. I appreciate everybody participating, and I'm going to look forward to seeing the rest of them that I couldn't see on the videos that they're going to be putting up next week or sometime. They've recorded all these sessions so that we can go back and review them again, or you can show them to other club members or people that weren't available today. So it's something new and exciting here. I'd rather do this school in person at the Der Dutchman, but situation as it was, we had to go this route this year, and we'll make the best of it here. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Line Steve.
Thank you.
Have a nice weekend, everyone.